It's time to share my story. Or at least the part where I was married and at the time, thought I was happy. Honestly, this isn't an unusual tale. Many people have been through something similar. But for me, it's the first time telling it. Right after college, I met Emily. She was 5 years older than me. She had never been married, but had been in a long-term relationship that ended badly. Her fiancé cheated on her just before their wedding, and they broke up. As for me, I had never been married, or even had a serious relationship. I wasn't the romantic type. I just lived my life, and mostly ignored the attention from the many girls who showed interest. But when it came time to settle down, I ended up marrying Emily. She seemed different, calmer, more modest, even a little mysterious. She carried herself with such dignity, and that's what drew me to her. Back then, I had my whole life planned out. Every little detail was figured out. The next step was to buy an apartment. I knew exactly what I wanted, a big 3-bedroom place in a new building. I took out a mortgage and planned some renovations. To cover the financial load, I got a job as a truck driver for a transport company. I worked tirelessly, sometimes disappearing for weeks or even months at a time. But my wife seemed happy. She trusted me completely, and I did my best to provide for her so she'd never have to worry about anything. Our life seemed perfect. We never fought. Not that we had much time for it. Everything was falling into place, problems were solved, and goals were checked off the list. We bought the apartment, and Emily started working too. She got a job at a clothing store near our place. Life was moving forward smoothly. But at some point, I can't even say exactly when things started to fall apart. My peaceful life was shattered by a series of unexpected events. I think it all began one seemingly normal morning, just before I was about to leave for another work trip. "Good morning. Aren't you leaving today?" my wife asked as I sat down for breakfast. "Yeah, I'm leaving at 11, I replied. "What about you? Got anything planned?" I wasn't really expecting an answer. I already knew her daily routine. She would call me throughout the day, send me photos, and update me on what was going on. While I was away, Emily kept herself busy. "I've been at work all day, and after that, I'm going to visit my sister," she told me over breakfast. She and her husband are taking a bus tour around the region to see beautiful and interesting places. Olivia and Sam won't be joining, but I think I'll go with them. Tara might come too, if her husband allows it. Or maybe you could come with us. We could all go on the trip together. "Are you serious?" I laughed, shaking my head. I have 2 straight weeks of work ahead, and I'm already sick of sitting in the truck. Let's leave it at that. I'll catch up with you all later this weekend. It's just not in my plans right now. I tried to keep the conversation light. She had her own schedule, and while she worked occasionally, it wasn't often. Only about 4 days a week. It was the kind of job many would consider a dream. Days passed as usual, until suddenly trouble hit at work. Our company ran into issues, and several of my colleagues' scheduled trips were canceled. I ended up working 4 exhausting days before finally making it home. To be honest, I was relieved by the unexpected change. It gave me a chance to rest. But by the second day at home, I started feeling off, weak and unusually tired. At first, I brushed it off as a minor infection, just a sore throat and a runny nose. But by the 4th day, things took a turn. My symptoms became more concerning. I had no choice but to go straight to the doctor. I'll skip the details of the appointment and get straight to the point. I had contracted an STI. How the hell did that happen? I wasn't the type to mess around, and neither was Emily. She wasn't that kind of woman. My mind raced. What the hell was going on? What would she think of me now? And how could she prove her innocence? There was no escaping it. A massive scandal was inevitable. The evidence was clear. Around noon, still reeling from the shock, I ran to the pharmacy down the street. And as if fate wanted to make things even worse, I ran right into my wife's sister, Julia. "Hi," I said, trying to act normal and hide my panic. Julia froze for a moment. Maybe she hadn't heard me, or maybe she just didn't know what to say. "Didn't you go on a trip with your husband?" I asked, watching her shift her gaze. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at something behind me. I turned around, and there she was, my wife. She was strolling by, staring at her phone, completely unaware of what was happening around her. A lump formed in my stomach. Anna, what the hell is going on? I'm not the type to freeze in moments like this. I put the pieces together quickly and yanked the phone from her hand, scrolling through it. Give it back, she shouted, trying to grab it from me. But it was too late. I had already seen everything I needed to see. Her gallery was filled with photos of a man I recognized, the owner of the store where she worked. It turned out she hadn't been as bored as she claimed while I was away. There were pictures of them at restaurants, clubs, saunas, swimming pools, even weekend getaways. I knew the places in the photos. One was a tourist spot with an old church in the background. She had sent me a picture from that exact location, telling me it was part of her excursion. What kind of excursion is this? I snapped. Having a good time. You even brought me a souvenir. I pointed at her jacket, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Come on, stop it. I'm sorry, she stammered. Sorry? What have you been doing? Who is this guy? I demanded, scrolling further. I spotted a couple of other men in the photos too. Were they just friends, or something more? She didn't say a word. And honestly, I didn't need her to. I was furious. My anger boiled over. And without thinking, I hurled her phone onto the asphalt with all my strength. It shattered into pieces. The next day, I filed for divorce. After a long conversation with my wife's sister, Julia, I learned everything. She had caught Emily in our bed, with one of her lovers. Apparently, while I was away, Emily wasn't exactly keeping things discreet. She had not one, but two men on the side, and I knew them both. There was no doubt in my mind. Divorce was the only option. Emily didn't give up easily. She bombarded me with texts and calls, begging for forgiveness, day and night. But what was the point? I had no interest in giving her another chance. A year later, I remarried. Life with my new wife has been great. I'm happy. I still hear about Emily now, and then when I run into Julia. Apparently, she ended up marrying one of the guys she'd been seeing. According to Julia, their marriage is going well. Well, good for her, I guess.